Welcome back, guys. Harry here, known as Trade Shop, and yeah, Bitcoin is in such a delicate situation here, guys, and I just want to clear some things up and and dive a little bit deep. Make it a 10-minute video, guys, and just look at Ethereum as well, holding very strong to this, kind of telling us where the market cycle is going, and I'm gonna give you a few scenarios. So as we can see, I've always told you, as long as we're holding this pivot here, guys, as long as we're holding, I can't be bearish on this chart. We tested this resistance, this support here, bounced off, and we're still holding the pivot. Essentially, we've just established a range here, right? And you can see we have a clear range with the top side of the range coming in at 57. 400 and the bottom side coming at 53 until we close below or close above. There's nothing to be said. We're ranging, right? Now, if we do, there are a lot of signals saying that, all right, we're getting a bit tired. Look at daily momentum is also down, but remember, daily momentum is getting down to that critical zone here. And let's have a look at 2-day momentum. 2-day momentum also broke this trend line here very aggressively, as you can see. So that's also crossed the trend line. Looking at 3-day has as this trend line coming in, so we could bounce off this trend line, and this trend line here on the 3-day has been catching which lows? It has caught the low all the way back at this 10,000, this level here at about 10,000. And if you remember clearly, and this is what I want to show you that's very, very interesting, guys, is that the low it caught here, right after the dump at 10,000, and then we saw the sideways consolidation, is very similar to the dump we had recently. And if I bring back my drawings, the other dump it caught is the one back here from the the Black Swan event. So what's very interesting with both of these dumps, and what I want you guys to realize, is that first of all, they're very, very aggressive dumps. Secondly, they also have a lot of sideways accumulation. And third, you can see that both of these dumps all did what? They all went under the 50 moving average. And if I bring back the 50 moving average, which is this green and red line here, we crossed below, we always recovered above, and then same on this dump here, we did not. I thought this was the dump where we did cross below, but we did not cross below. But here's one reference where we did cross below and we did recover above. And more recently, we are crossing below. Oh yeah, because yeah, fine, fair enough. Sorry, I was referring to the daily. But what we can see is a basing area for this dump was, yeah, I remember now what I wanted to talk. A basing area for this dump was here at 10,000 on the 50, and we check where the 50 is coming in. It's coming all the way at 41,000, which I said is probably a bearish target if Bitcoin was to have a massive correction. But keep in mind that I don't think that we reached the 50 on this. Why? Because look at how momentum has increased since this area, right? So if momentum has increased, price drives further away from the 50 moving average. So what does that tell me? Well, that tells me and makes me rely on these Stokes, right? We can see that if we were to catch these dump, because you can see that all of these dumps were very similar. We had an aggressive dump here, recovery, a very aggressive dump here, and we had the blast off. And if we look now, we have a very aggressive dump here, and we could have another blast off after testing that trend line. So I like that we have that support on that trend line coming in there, and I think that's a positive for Bitcoin. Now, if we do cross below this 53, I think Bitcoin can easily come back down to this 47 target area here, go on a daily, more clear. I mean, yeah, we could easily breach. To be honest, this 51 target here is kind of our last level of support, because then what essentially this becomes is a massive range, and I don't really get bearish until the weekly was to close below this pivot here. If the weekly was to close below this pivot here, then I can drive targets down here to 45,000 and probably below. But until that happens, I'm not going to say anything, right? And what we could essentially do is have a range. Now, if we scroll back on the BLX chart here and we go to 2013, if I believe, we did have a similar thing here. Where was it? We had a sideways, a pump, and a sideways accumulation. Yeah, this was the one. So we could have something very similar to what we had here, but what you notice about all of these blow off tops, which is very interesting, and why I don't think, because in my last video, remember guys, I showed you RSI, and I showed you how RSI always peaks, always peaks, on in the 90 percentile on these big bull runs. So if I bring up the RSI here, and I would like to show you something, RSI, and we have a look at the RSI here, you can see that on the bull runs, we always peak, look here, 90%. What was this? 98% there on the right. You can see that. Second peak of this, 98, 95%, 2017. What did we peak at? 90%, right? We're here at 90%. 2019, what did we peak at? We peaked at 77%. Then here, coming in the middle of the bull run, not the peak, right? We went up to 95, but look how many times it peaked in A. Look how many times it peaked here in 2013, twice, and look in 2017 how many peaks. But we never see the reversal without a peak, right? You see it peaks, then we get the massive reversal. From this point here, it hasn't peaked. We have just reached a top, not a top, but we reach a resistance, and we haven't peaked, right? It's sitting at the 65, 64 percentile. So that's telling me, you know, that's not following trend. And look at this weekly trend line regression coming in from here, right? So we could easily come down and test that, right? It's a very good possibility. And we're still holding on the weekly above the bullish control zone, right? So another interesting thing is calculating how long these bull runs last. My calculation came in that this bull run would last till May, just based off previous data. So that's another sign telling us like, okay, maybe we should be a bit cautious here, right? And that's something of previous data saying that, you know, that May was going to be the end. That's why that there is that red line there. But I think that it's not the case, because it just, things are not lining up. It's in a very delicate situation. I think we might get a shakeout. Another thing with all of these is we normally see a blow off top. We don't normally see, you know, the only last time we saw that was here, where we run up, and even there we see some wicks here on the weekly. We haven't got much wicks, to be honest. I don't know if that's something new or not. On top, you know, if you look, all of these, we have huge wicks. We could have something similar here to 2012 here, where we had this run up. We dumped, went sideways for, you know, a couple of months, and then continued up, similar to here. We had a nice correction here, right, from this point to this point, recovered, and then continued running up for another, you know, 600%, right? Which, you know, if we were to do diminishing returns and diminish that to 100%, bring us up to that 100K level. So that's what I find very interesting, and it is coming into a market cycle, because now if we hop on to Ethereum and we have a look at what Ethereum is doing here, we can see that Ethereum, on the other hand, I want to go back to my normal Ethereum charts. There we go. Ethereum tapped our target to the T, guys. I mean, can we get a round of applause for that TA? Let's get it, guys. Look how that tapped to the T. I mean, I swear, guys, go back in my videos. I promise you I did not draw that pivot and it came in. So nice to see that it tapped that to the T and then started to pull back. And we can see how nice that pullback was, right? It pulled back perfectly to our next resistance here and just retested it as support and bounced off, you know. So that's classic to me. That's classic, and that's showing me that we can move this line up here. And Ethereum, on the other hand, is looking very bullish, right? I don't like RSIs, by the way, guys. So we have Stokes turning up on the daily, right? We have the weekly, you know, in a really good zone. Weekly looks extremely bullish if it takes, especially if it takes out its wick. 4 hour, on the other hand, looking like, you know, it's putting in a formation, something like this, which we can see we have a very sharp rising lows here, and it's just a pattern, guys. You don't really need to draw it, but what I'm trying to say is it's accumulating at a higher level and playing between the pivots. I mean, it's showing structure and bullishness, right? Look at this, right? We've seen resistance, pull back, breakout, pull back to where? Exact same resistance, and now breakout. So it's looking very, very bullish. It looks completely the opposite of Bitcoin. And this is what we saw in the market cycle, right? The altcoin season. And that brings my attention to bring you guys onto, you know, I'm bullish. I'm looking for my upper targets to be hit. Now, that brings my attention to altcoins. If Bitcoin does take this drastic pullback, I think Ethereum will take a hit. Bitcoin will take that hit. And alts will also take that hit very heavy. But what's really contradicting in a TA perspective is that every time we've seen Bitcoin have that pullback, we've seen all the alts be impacted. But if we come down here to the Bitcoin dominance, we broke below my range, retested the range, and now are breaking down. You can see I drew this line in and I said, all right, we've closed below. I'm looking for our next target to be hit. And we just put in a 4-hour retest on that target, right? And on top of that, closing below the resistance. And, you know, you can see that we have a clean drive all the way down here to 50%. And we haven't seen it got there in a long time. I think it's been 2 years. Look, 2019. And now we're in 2021. And we just breached that resistance. So Bitcoin dominance is crashing. It's really, really coming down quite hard. And that's interesting to see, and is kind of shifting my bias to altcoins. But we haven't seen an altcoin explosion like we used to see. Unfortunately, what we end up seeing is we're seeing all of these really, really bad coins and all of these TikTok shillers pumping all of these BSC smart chain. Now, I'm not to say that you can't make money, but it's not the same way as last time. And normally we saw that towards the end of the bull run, we saw all the crap being pumped, you know. But if you look, you know, altcoins across the board have been getting a little bit of a green day here. We can see Injective up 19%. Wow, you could see accumulated at that level, now breaking up all-time highs. You know, just some of the ones that I've saved here, you know, across the board, they are getting green. And I do think that is relevant to this Bitcoin dominance going down. But if Bitcoin does take a crash, we could expect, you know, it to come down. So to wrap up all of these thoughts, what I think can happen is two things, guys, right? Is I think we can either fall into a super cycle where Bitcoin goes sideways, we have an altcoin season, right? And it manages to hold this range between 51,000 and where we are. And then we get going again, Bitcoin dominance start to rise. Or what I think can happen is we can have a huge shakeout and possibly a deeper correction all the way back down to about 39, 40,000 before continuing this bull run up and onwards. It's in a very pivotal situation. So my advice, no, I'm not going to give advice, guys, but you know, what I'd be looking to do is to be in a cautious space in the market. I would be in a situation where you can liquidate your positions and your investments as soon as the market decides to make a decision, right? Because at the end of the day, we could have just a scam wick, right? And I showed you that trend line coming in on the 3-day, which is a very strong trend line, I believe. And I think that can support Bitcoin price. With Ethereum increasing like it is, I think that's quite healthy for the price. And if we close above this pivot here on the 4-hour, we're going to come back and test all-time highs. And this is all playing into the narrative of the cycle, right? So we're at a very interesting time. Bitcoin is contradicting because there are big warning signs, but at the same time, we're bouncing off this level, which is normal to see a bounce, you know. This might roll over, looking at 4-hour momentum still down, but could take a cross up. Do we have a trend line supporting it? Not really, no. So, you know, I would be in a position where I'm not, I'm ready to liquidate very fast, and I'll be watching the markets closely at this point to be able to be in a situation where I could pick up these dips, because remember, we're in it for the long term. So if you are in it for the long term like me, then, you know, these dips are to be bought up, but we could see a bit bigger correction, or Bitcoin could just range. You know, this is the thing with going into a new bull market, is we don't know how the market sentiment's going to react. We have a lot of institutions coming in. We have a lot of different investors holding Bitcoin at this current time. And at the same time, we have a lot of new people holding the coin who can cause that ripple effect and start dumping the price. So if you're coming in with that mindset, I think you can be in the best position using technical analysis and using the information I've given you to position yourself to be in the best possibility to keep your profits and not lose. Because the biggest problem in 2017, everyone just rode the wave down. So as I always say, no one has ever insulted you for taking profits, right? So, and there's no harm in taking profits. So with that being said, I think I'll wrap it up at there. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Remember, take care, trade sharp, and until next time, peace.